Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time as we begin our 1994 season, where each month we will look at the best and worst 1994 had to offer in action movies. And we can give you a heads up that 94 was an absolute stellar year for action, so we will be covering a number of stone cold classics this year. As always, we kick off the year with Chanuary. We should maybe really do a theme tune for that at some stage, I feel. And that voice you can hear, that laugh that you heard right there, that is my co host. He's a stand up, he's a screenwriter, he's a newly minted professor. It's Mr. Craig Draheim.
I think we should start with the song called I Hate Daddy.
That's
How's
that's true. That's that I hate daddy. That's just it should be in the theme song for this episode. Yeah.
yes, which is a part in the movie, and I can't tell. I guess we'll get into it. What because I could only find one that was the dubbed version in this for some reason, and so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you will, listener. I mean, you probably read the title of the podcast. You probably do know what movie it is. But in case you forgot to read the title, or you're just blindly listening to this episode, I suppose we should mention that this episode we will be covering Drunken Master II, or as it was released in North America,
Mhm.
Legend of Drunken Master.
Jackie Chan returns as the Drunken Master.
Here's another one. Keep drinking.
In the hazy world of the art of the drunken fist, there is a fine line you can never cross. Jackie Chan, Drunken Master II. Drunken Master 2. Don't cross his path when he's drunk.
So, your stats this time around is Drunken Master 2 was released on February the 3rd, 1994 in Hong Kong, but it did not reach US shores until the year 2000s. Its listed directors are Chia Liang Lu, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, and Jackie Chan. More discussion of that in a little while. It was written by three writers: Edward Tang, whose notable credits include a number of Jackie Chan movies, Police Stories 1 through 3, Mr. Nice Guy, and Rumble in the Bronx. Man Ming Tong, this is his only writing credit. And finally, Kai Chi Young, whose other notable writing credits are A Chinese Ghost Story and Once Upon a Time in China. I hope I've got all those names relatively well. I'm apologize to any Chinese or Hong Kong listeners who I've if I got them wrong, you can complain in the comments, and I'll try and get them right next. Try and get them better for January next year. Rating wise, it has an Rotten Tomato score of 84% based on 80 reviews, a Metacritic score of 74 based on 27 reviews, an IMDb score of 7.5 out of 10, and a Letterboxd score of 3.9. Box office wise, it made an estimated $34 million off an estimated $10 million budget. That, although that's not quite true because Wikipedia listed the budget in Hong Kong dollars and the box office in US dollars. So that's 10 million Hong Kong dollars, which in today's money is roughly 1.27 US. 1.27 million US dollars. But that's currently today. I don't know what that was in 1994. Finally, Drunken Master II was named one of the top 100 films of all time by Time magazine in 2005 and one of the top 10 action movies of all time by the British Film Institute in 2015. And that's your stats for this one.
I will say too, it based on if you've listened to other episodes or even our horror podcast, there's a certain famous film critic named Roger Ebert that usually is not too kind with certain types of movies, but he praised Drunken Master as like one of the greatest. Like the final 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, he was
like
really
the
into
perfect example of an action sequence that nothing would ever top it. I think it's one of the things he said from there on out.
Yeah, no, I read that as well, and I think it was like he, I guess he's not the biggest action fan, but I don't think he seemed to have the same grudge or ire towards action as he did horror. He seemed to be like, I reading Roger Ebert reviews, there's many things I often agreed with him on, but like pretty much any time I read one of his horror reviews, I was like, yeah, nah.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, I think you got this wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, he just had a real thing against horror. But yes, he was enthusiastic about this one, as were most critics, to be honest. And I have to say, I know that I've said before, I am a Jackie Chan fan. I very much am. He is, I've kind of gone through the kind of actors I've watched a lot of movies of and on Letterboxd, and he is in my top 20. This was the 37th Jackie Chan movie I've seen. But it was not one I had seen before. Drunken Master II, despite its reputation as one of his best, it'd been on my watch list for a while, but like I never got round to it. So I'm just freshly getting round to it, which may surprise people, as given what I previously said on other Jackie Chan episodes, where generally I've seen the movie.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So for me, this was one where I know we talked about it. It might have been during Mr. Nice Guy, where I remember when Rush Hour was either about to come out or was kind of coming out. Like before that, you would see maybe you could find in a bargain bin of like a VHS of Super Cop, which is Police Story 3.
Yep.
And but that was just kind of it occasionally. But then this was one where I actually, for the longest time, didn't know. I heard there was a sequel to Drunken Master, or part 2, but I didn't know that it was this one, because this was in the States, of course, called The Legend of the Drunken Master. So, and you couldn't really find anything on the first one from 1978. So I just assumed this was the first movie, and that's how this was the first one I watched. And all of that. So rewatching it after all these years, I was like, wait, I've seen this one. I didn't think I saw the sequel, but yeah, so it was one of those things.
Yeah,
but
right.
But no, I've always kind of, Jackie Chan is weirdly one of those ones that I'll stick through, even though, especially recently, he's had a lot of kind of bad, not great movies, but
Yes,
just
there's a lot of ones more in more recent years. I've not seen, like, I've not
yeah,
seen his latest, the latest one that came out. I was going to say this year, because we're
oh yeah,
recording this in 2023, but like, obviously you're listening to this in 2024. But like the John Cena one, the Hidden
yes,
Strike, I've not caught that. It's supposed to be bad.
yeah,
And yeah,
but
uh,
yeah.
there. So yeah.
So he's one that I try and stick with, and I think it was always because watching it, I- especially at a young age, I love, especially by the end, because you would get yeah, we did talk about this before, the
Yeah,
kind of blooper reel
the
stuff,
blooper
and
reel. Yeah, yeah.
which was just fascinating to watch. And so he was kind of my main entry into, especially kung fu movies, or yeah, Chinese martial art films. And, besides Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon or Fist of Fury and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Like, Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee, the kind of handful of Bruce Lee films we got. They were kind of my main gateway into Hong Kong cinema and martial arts cinema,
Mhm.
for sure. But yeah, no, I have to say, I am quite curious about some of his later ones, even though they are supposed to be uh, quite quite bad, you know.
Yeah,
Because like there is some that I'm just like, well, you know,
it
I
can't
don't
be
know.
that bad.
How bad can
Yeah,
bad can it be? You know,
yeah,
like because there, like, 'cause I was kind of looking through, his filmography like the other day, and I know he has that one that like he has that one Dragon Blade, where it's
yes,
like a kind of Chinese epic, and it's got Adrian Brody in it, it's got John Cusack in it, and I'm like, Jackie Chan, John Cusack, Adrian Brody,
yeah,
how bad can it be? But like this is how they get you, because like I've seen loads of movies like that, and it's like, well, this cast, like, yeah, can't be that bad. Yeah, yes, it can. Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, it can. Why do you keep falling for this? Like,
Yeah,
what are you doing?
yeah. Well, and his last kind of big one over here was, it didn't even go that well. Whereas it was very much marketed as, this is Jackie Chan taking on. You've never seen him like this before. It was what was it? The Foreigner,
Yes,
with
which
Pierce
is actually
Brosnan, and
supposed to be quite good. I
it
remember that
is, yeah,
getting good reviews. So I've not seen that, but like I remember that getting good reviews. That's one I want to check out for sure.
yeah. No, I
Um,
enjoyed it, but I don't think anybody went to see it. That's like,
yeah,
or something. Yeah,
I think that's maybe, I don't know. There is certain people that I don't think audiences like seeing in a different light. That they don't want to see dark, broody Jackie. They want
yeah,
to see, like, slapstick comedy, martial arts Jackie. Like
yeah,
that's what they want to see. It's not that it's not what they came for. But like I heard that one was good. Um, Unlike some of the other ones that I want to check out just for the kind of amusement value, like I said, like a Dragon Blade, or that movie he did with Arnie, which is supposed to be bad, Iron Mask.
yeah.
Like,
Yes,
some of those I might check out for the laughs. But
yeah,
like, but no, the Foreigner I kind of want to check out, for for the movie itself.
yeah,
Um, so that's funny that you felt that you hadn't seen this one before, but you actually had. Now,
yeah,
before we get into the film, what we used to do in the podcast is we used to go through the plot kind of beat by beat, so there was no need for a plot synopsis. But we kind of changed it up to kind of because the podcast was getting more and more gargantuan in length. So we a while ago we decided to change it up and kind of talk more generally about the films, like they do on most other podcasts. I see why most other podcasts don't go through the plot beat by beat, because it's like it can kind of it can kind of drag on. Although some people, I think people did still enjoy it, so I'm hoping that people still enjoyed those episodes as much as we enjoyed recording them. But as we are doing it a bit differently, as we're kind of bouncing back and forth more, Craig, can you give us a brief plot synopsis of Drunken Master II?
Yes. So Jackie Chan's character, I'm sorry if I mispronounce, it's Fei.
Wong Fei Hong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Wong Fei. So he is going through traveling with his father through customs, and he doesn't want his father to pay the extra tax, so he puts the ginseng in basically a British not an expatriate, but a British.
He's like a diplomat.
Yeah, I know they give a different word in the place of the
He's the head of the consulate, so I think he's the
Yes.
British consul.
Yes. So he puts it in the suitcase so that they can walk right through, and then he was going to get it afterwards. And then while on the train, as he's going to retrieve it, there's another man that is stealing a box from the same suitcase. He chases the man, and the two fight. I'll try and make this even more brief, but it ends up turning out that they switched the ones. So now the thief has the ginseng, and Jackie Chan's character has basically a Chinese artifact, and that is what they then start that there are people looking for within the British government that's over there at the time, and yeah, trying to find. And basically then what happens is we get a series of, there's a steel mill that is being now run by a branch of the British government, and they're definitely not up to good, I guess we'll get to. Wink, wink.
Up to evil.
Yes. And then throughout the whole thing, he's just trying to kind of, I don't know, honor his father, but he keeps messing up because he does this thing called drunken boxing, which he needs to get drunk to do successfully. And he likes martial arts and fighting, and that's what he resorts to. But his father is kind of a very respectable doctor and doesn't believe he should be fighting. And so that's a lot of the clashing between the two of them, until then it turns out that this kind of section of the British government are basically taking all of these Chinese artifacts so they can put them in their own museum. And these people that now own the steel mill are using that as a front to steal these artifacts from the Chinese people, basically, and sell to the British government for lots of money. And it's up to Jackie Chan to kind of stop it. But then, yeah, there's a series of other scenes that are loosely connected, but that's the general plot of it until he fights in the steel mill. And yeah, what a lot of people talk about is one of the greatest kind of martial art, or most iconic martial art fight scenes ever done.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we will talk about that end fight scene, obviously, in a while. Not right now, but like there's great fights throughout the movie. One of the things I think I wanted to bring up kind of first of all is like that kind of opening section when they're the mistake with the ginseng and the Chinese artifact. And I don't know if it's just because like when that section happens and the British are looking for that artifact on the train, and then like a kind of counterintelligence officer, played by Andy Lau, is he kind of gets Jackie and co out of jail by kind of saying like, "Oh no, they definitely don't have it. It's all good.
Yeah.
You can just leave them alone." And I think that like because of that, and I think maybe just because like I've seen a bunch of Hong Kong films and I know that Andy Lau is quite a big star, I assumed that Andy Lau would play like a role in the movie, but he's literally just in those scenes on the train, and I was really thrown by that. I was like, what? It's just a cameo? Like you hired him just to play this like cameo character that basically gets him out of jail like at one time, and then it's like, oh, he's counterintelligence, because they even like make a point when they see his ID card that he's like counterintelligence, that like I was like, oh, okay, all right, that's obviously going to come up,
Yeah. No,
but it's not.
they set it up completely. They give so much information and highlight him so much in the beginning that you're like, okay, so he has to pop up. And I remember after. No, I completely agree. Of that, yeah, he pops up so much so that, and they give so many hints that by the end, I felt like maybe I missed something where I had to go back through. I actually, after watching it, I reread the Wikipedia plot synopsis thing. I kept trying to figure out if he came back through even at the end. I was like, he has to have been in here at some point, because why would they put so much focus on him? But no, that's it.
Yeah, because like they kind of, in the kind of opening sequence, in the kind of line to go onto the train, and then when they're on the train, they kind of cut back and forth to him like 3 or 4 times, and then when you get the reveal that he's a counterintelligence officer, that very much feels like foreshadowing. You're like, well, that means he might be gone for like a while, but he's definitely going to turn up in the last 20 minutes and like help Jackie or his character Wong Fei Hong to like take down the British consul or something. And it just felt so much like foreshadowing that I was like, when he just didn't turn up again, I was like, what? So thrown by it.
Yeah. And that would be my weirdest complaint about because the action sequences are amazing. So I'm not deterring from that, but yeah, I felt like throughout certain things where like there's either relationships that they try to develop a little, like the one with the what's her name, Fun, the woman that's obviously interested in
Fun, the woman who works at the fish market.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like they have this whole element of her wanting to be trained specifically by him in drunken boxing, that they like, okay, so is this supposed to be a like, romance subplot? And there's all these different little elements like that then just really don't go anywhere.
It does feel interesting because like some of the relationships in the film kind of don't really work. There's a lot of great stuff in this film. There is a reason why the BFI rated it as one of the top 10 best action movies of all time. There is a reason why this movie got rave reviews, and the reason is a lot to do with the martial arts, and we will discuss the many great things this film has to offer. But there is certain flaws. And so, yeah, some of the relationships don't make sense. I don't think that makes much sense. And also, the other character who works at the fish market, who I now can't remember the name of.
Isn't it Shang? The one who basically becomes his second, like they join together randomly.
Yes, so that relationship doesn't quite work. Yes, Shang. Yes. It's spelled Tsang, which I think is Shang. But like, I hope I'm getting that correct. Yes, because his character starts out as he's a bit cocky. Um, he thinks that his martial arts is better than Jackie's martial arts. They have a bit of a scuffle at the market. They kind of set him up as kind of like a love rival for fun, and it kind of sets up like it's going to be like this love triangle throughout the film, and maybe he's going to be like antagonist. He's going to be like a kind of secondary antagonist in the movie, like a kind of lower level one that Jackie can deal with quite easily. But he's going to be that kind of little bit of a bully character, a little bit of a cocky and a little bit of a know-it-all. But then they become like best buds like halfway through the movie, and like like. Basically, not long after, like Jackie, like kind of embarrasses him and kind of beats him up in the fish park, they're like, yeah, actually, we've been allies all along, and you're like, we're actually great friends, and it's like, it's quite confusing.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of moments because even so, the main relationships are between him and his father.
Yes,
and then there's him, and I don't know, maybe I know it's based loosely off of a real person.
Yes,
but,
so so Wong Fei Hung is a real martial arts master from the 19th century. But he's like a kind of Cantonese kind of folk hero. And there's like just dozens of films like made about him with him as his like central character. Like the Once Upon a Time in China films, they're also the main protagonist is Wong Fei Hung. And there's just tons of Hong Kong movies that have Wong Fei Hung as like the lead protagonist in the movie. So like obviously it's very vaguely based on this character, because like drunken boxing as it exists in the movie doesn't exist in real life. There is a drunken boxing style in real life, but it is not performed or enhanced by drinking alcohol.
But yes. Which we'll get into that during the fight stuff. But anyway, so there's like, which I don't know why they added it in this way, and I don't know if it's just because that's who they cast, but it's like they had, so the stepmother, who I believe it was played by an actress that was younger than Jackie Chan, if I was right. But
yes, so and the late Anita Muir, who sadly passed away in 2003 at the age of only 40. She is 9 years younger than Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan was born in 1954, and she was born in 1963.
So they play it, one, like she's older, which I know happens anyways with women in movies, but then so she's his stepmother, but also his aunt, but also she's obviously been around enough or long enough that he considers her like a mother because they have this really strong bond. And then I don't know, there's just, then he's also played like a man that's just coming of age. Some of the way they talk about him, like, oh, he's an 18-year-old, which Jackie Chan by the time of this movie would have been, I forget, I had the math in my head, but he would have been in his 30s, or I don't think 40s.
So I guess it does play a bit weird, because I think the character in the movie is supposed to be about 21, and Jackie in real life was, when the movie came out in 1994, he would have been 40. So even if the film was shot in 1993, he still would have been 39. So I am currently 38, and I definitely could not pass for a 21-year-old, and neither could Jackie.
No, not at all. That's what I'm saying. As you're watching it, and she makes some comment at one point when she's trying to deter the father of like, oh well, he's what she talks about being pregnant, or well, Wong Fei Hung, he's at that age now where he's just, I think he's ready to have a relationship, and like he's starting to think about girls, or like that's how she's phrasing it. I'm like, wait a minute, how old is he right now?
Yes. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm sure I remember reading that. Yeah, the character's supposed to be around
Okay.
2021. Yeah. So we got 40-year-old Jackie playing like 20 years younger than he is. But then, I mean, action stars have often done
Yeah.
that, of like just having their age just shaved off. It's a bit like, I guess, one of the more recent hilarious egregious examples of this is when the movie Hobbs and Shaw tried to convince us that Jason Statham and Vanessa Kirby could be brother and sister, and that's fine if the different mother stepmother kind of situation. But no, they show a flashback where they're roughly of a similar age, and like Jason Statham is a man in his 50s who's about 20 years older than Vanessa Kirby.
Yeah. And he looks like he's in his 50s. He doesn't. Like, he's a man that's in shape. I'm not gonna say that, but no, he definitely looks like he's an older individual.
Yeah. But I think like the baldness doesn't help with that. Like, because like I think Jason Statham is one of those guys who kind of always looked 40. So he looks like much younger than his age now. But like when he was younger, he's just always, it was something about the baldness and the stubble and that kind of the kind of face that he has. It just looks permanently middle aged, which is useful in old age, but doesn't kind of age you in younger age.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, cutting back to the movie.
Okay. So plot itself. So yeah, the relationships are strange in that part. I mean, the focus is primarily, as I said before, on the son and father and kind of their dynamic, but then that even shifts, I don't know, because it's supposed to be a comedy. This is, I know, for that character, that kind of folk hero, it's one of the first time, or maybe only still up until this point, but I know at the time it was the first time that where they kind of made it humorous. The stories around this.
The original Drunken Master is quite humorous.
Yes. I mean, but like Jackie Chan's version of the character is
yes, Jackie Chan's version of the character. Yes, that's correct, because he's usually it's usually not more comical. Like a kind of more traditional take on it would be something like the Once Upon a Time in China movies. Where he's this very kind of noble character, and there's a lot of gravitas to the character, and so like that's the much more normal version of Wong Fei Hung on screen. This is the kind of slapsticky version we get here. Is a bit different. I did want to do, like, again, on kind of some of the weirdness of the movie, I guess I did want to talk about that as well in terms of the comedy. What I think there's like different aspects of the comedy that I think would be interesting to talk about. One of the things is the kind of the tonal shifts. So apparently Jackie wanted the character to be more responsible in this film. So the original was made 16 years before, in 1978, and it's pure slapstick, and like the character gets drunk and he fights and he has fun with it. But Jackie at this stage felt that he had more responsibility, he had more influence in the world on young fans, didn't want young impressionable fans to become alcoholics or whatever. Even though I think based on this movie that would be very unlikely, but all the same, I like
it doesn't paint it well.
Yeah. But it is interesting how that is portrayed in the movie, where some of the drinking is fun and goofy, just like it was in the original Drunken Master, but then there is this other side to it where they kind of show the dark side of drinking, and they have like they have Jackie kind of down and out, and they they show where he pushes alcoholism too far, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not sure like the slapstick stuff works. That when he's playful with it, where he's fighting drunk and stuff like that. I'm not sure the dramatic stuff, and when he's at his lowest low, and he swears not to drink again, and his father kicks him out of the house. Does that work? I like it. Jackie is great. He's one of I think Jackie is one of the greatest physical actors of all time. But as a dramatic actor, not as good. And I'm not sure that he sells those moments all that
No,
well. I don't know if you have a different opinion, Greg.
no, I agree. I was actually that's one of my notes as well. That it does feel so. He drinks and he fights so one of the first fights against the foreman and kind of the goons, I guess. He gets drunk, he's taking them all out, and then he drinks too much and kind of goes after his father because he's drinking some. But then everything gets revealed. Yeah, and it takes this turn of him being too drunk. And he's thrashing around, and it just feels out of sync with what we've led up with for that 30 minutes prior, or however long it was. I didn't keep track of time, but and then it switches after a bit, and yeah, it feels like it comes from two different movies, instead of like, oh, here's a one cohesive movie of, oh, it's a comedy but with a dramatic scene, versus no, this just feels like it's completely out of something else. For me, and yeah, you were saying,
and
the same way.
I do feel like when we have like this kind of darkest hour moment, where he's too drunk to fight, Ken Lo's character, and Ken Lo's character just kind of beats him up, and then the kind of henchman that Jackie beat up earlier, they strip him, and they hang him from the market with with a sign attached to him, and all this. Yeah, like you, I felt that was out of a different movie, like a grittier, bloodier movie. And it just didn't quite fit with the tone of most of the rest of the movie, which most of the rest of the movie is highly comical. It's played for laughs. It's very slapsticky. Yeah. So
until later on, then they're tortured again. It's like that happens twice in the movie, and it goes really dark, where they get imprisoned by the British consulate and they're beaten up in the prison cells and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, geez, what's going
and that
on
was
right
kind of that was really kind of weird as well, because like that was almost like, as much as that was a dark sequence, it was almost kind of weirdly funny as well,
Yeah.
just because of like the kind of goofy costumes that the British guards are wearing. They're basically, if for people who've maybe not seen the movie, and if you haven't seen the movie, obviously we spoiled all of it already.
Yes.
We're going to spoil more of it now, and you should maybe probably go away and watch the movie and come back to this point in the episode. So yeah, the guards are wearing basically like kind of rugby uniforms, but they've got like black boxing gloves on, and yeah, they're just beating up Shang and Wong Fei, Wong Fei Hung, and it was kind of, yeah, it just looked weird. I don't know if that was traditional uniform for the British in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Back in the day, back in the
Why
early
not?
20th
Sure.
century. I mean, why not? Yeah, they're all going to dress like rugby players with boxing gloves. Yeah, it's a bit weird, but like, yeah, I think like the other thing with the comedy is I think some of the comedy, particularly, is maybe not aged well, or
Yeah.
is maybe or it maybe just hits a Western eye kind of differently. Because like I will say, Anita Mew as a stepmother is great. She is
Yeah.
great in this movie, and she has a lot of really funny moments. Um, and she even kind of makes the moment where Jackie is like kicked out the house, and like the father is like beating everybody up with a a kind of stick, it's kind of disciplining them. Um, but even Anita's Move performance, which kind of makes it still not too bad, it does feel very awkward. It feels very kind of like, oh, we're laughing at domestic violence.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. And then because there's the whole sequence, and it's a great in terms of the physicality of it sequence where she's like, she pretty much reveals that she's pregnant, but she might not even be. She might just be saying that. That's kind of the hint that's given.
Yeah.
But then she's like, I'm just going to get rid of this baby then because I don't want to live in this world. And she keeps trying to jump on the ground belly first. And the father's then catching her. And yeah, this is really great bit of physical comedy, I would say, of what she's doing with her body during it. But yeah, the joke is that she's trying to abort this fetus by jumping stomach first. I guess it's
Yes. And she announces that she's pregnant, or is maybe possibly not pregnant, to get out of like being quote unquote disciplined.
Yeah.
With a large bamboo stick. Which, yeah, it feels all very awkward, despite the fact that like it is a great piece of physical comedy from her. And I would say that outside of Jackie himself, I would say that Anina Mew is the kind of secondary star of this movie.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the best comedy comes from her, and like her banter with Jackie, and like all those moments that she does to try and like hide her gambling addiction that she clearly has. um all that kind of stuff, I think it works. And when she kind of rushes past people to get the wine to help Jackie in his fight in the market, and the kind of physical comedy of that, I think like she really has like a star turn in this movie.
She does, definitely. Well, it's even they make it funny. She does well, and again, that's like not a domestic violence joke, but it's a violence against women joke of where the villain or one of the villains hits her, and that's kind of what sparks the fight. But then instead of playing it fully, like here she got hit, it's like the whole joke is that she's now trying to give Jackie Chan instructions and yell to him, but she can't because her jaw is hurt or something. So she's talking with her mouth open, like trying to talk to him, and that's the joke of it. And like she does a great job with it. Again, it's like another one of those elements of like it's from what you're doing with it is really funny, but the content of what or the basis of what led to this joke, I don't know if it.
Yeah, again, it was one of those things of like I did feel a little bit awkward about laughing, but because like her performance sells it so well, and because she is so funny shouting the instructions, even though she can't actually shout the instructions, because are kind of, she's acting as if her jaw's locked, so she's, like you say, is just kind of going
Yeah.
that, yeah, because she sells it so much, like you do kind of end up laughing, even though, like you say, the source of where this joke came from is questionable.
And that brings up another thing about the plot is that I know this is kind of a recurring thing within Jackie Chan movies that I've seen where the villains seem to be. I just have nobody questions them. You think about with her that they hit her, and everybody's like whoa, they're scared about it. But then Jackie Chan is the one who gets in trouble for fighting in the market, so on and so forth. But then it's the same when they have point blank kill, again, spoiler, they kill that master, and
Yes,
then
Master
like
Fu, who
yeah,
is
and then
played by the co-director.
yes.
Well, he's not really a co-director. I guess. Well, you finish your point, and then I guess
Okay.
we'll maybe talk about that for a second.
Yes. So Master Fu, who is the one who is trying to steal back the emerald, kind of, or the artifact in the beginning, he is hit with an axe later on with it, and then he's shot point blank. People see it, but then everybody's upset with Jackie Chan's character for then trying to like get not even revenge, but just like take care of these corrupt people. You're like, oh, and I don't know if it's just the plot of those movies, but I think it happened in Mr. Nice Guy as well. I feel like it's just this thing of like the villain's just getting away with it, and then him looking more like a jerk when he tries to help.
Yeah, I think that I think it maybe makes slightly more sense here than in Mr. Nice Guy, just because I think it's supposed to portray, what a kind of that the people who are connected to the British consulate can just kind of get away with anything, and the kind of grip the British had on the area and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and like the kind of corrosive influence of the British. And so I think I kind of went with it more in this movie than in Mr. Nice Guy, where it's like, they're it's just one gang. It's just one gang. It's not like they own the area or they control the area, in the same sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And despite coming from the UK, I do always enjoy these movies. That it's just like fuck the British and everything they've done to us.
And you definitely get that sense in this movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, and it is interesting because yeah, I feel like we covered like Police Story 3, Super Cop, where obviously they he teams up with Michelle Yeoh, and then that kind of was like a team up of like Hong Kong and China and like getting along, and obviously it's not that it's not that long after this. It's 1997 that Hong Kong's handed over back to China, so I feel like there's a more kind of pro China kind of anti British kind of thing going on, particularly in that kind of 90s period, as we're kind of getting to that stage of like, because they knew years in advance that the handover would take place in 97. But yeah, I feel like that's very much was of that moment, which is like I say, the British have done a lot of bad things in the world. Obviously, this is a movie podcast. We can't really go into it in depth, but yeah, it's always good to see British villains get a good kicking.
Yeah. So you were going to talk about the co-director.
Yes. So he's not really a co-director in the sense that obviously there are directing partnerships where two people direct a movie together. This is not the case here. What happened with this movie is the actor and director who played Master Fu. Basically, he had a different vision for the movie. He wanted to have more of the kind of grounded fighting that we see in the beginning of the movie, where Master Fu and Wong Fei Hung have a fight, with the kind of stick fight under the bridge and out the train and stuff like that. And So more hard-hitting style of martial arts. And I think there was a number of other disagreements that he had with Jackie. Apparently, Jackie didn't like his shooting style, and yeah, I think also yes, also the Xia Lung, uh, Shi Liang Lu, who is not actually credited as that in the movie. He's credited as something else. Um, Interestingly enough, because like it's interesting because he has like kind of two names. He's listed on IMDb as Xia Liang Lu, but he's credited in the movie as Lao Kar Lung. I'm not really, yeah. So I don't know if that was like he just had like a stage name because he was an actor as well. He was in a number of Shaw Brothers movies. But yes, the other thing that they had a disagreement about was that he wanted to use wire work, and Jackie Chan was very much against using any wire work. So they butted heads a number of times over the course of the movie, and then eventually, I'll guess I'll just pick one name to stick with. Xia Liang Lu walked off set and washed his hands of the movie, and Jackie basically shot the final battle sequence, like that kind of last 20 minutes, which apparently took roughly 4 months to shoot. Like according to the IMDb with trivia, each day they came away with about 3 seconds of usable footage. So that final section took about 4 months to shoot. So, but I think that was the only bit that Jackie actually directed, just that final battle at the Ironworks, which obviously a very complicated shoot. Which landed him the co-directing credit.
Okay. It makes sense, I guess, why it takes so long too, because again, I guess not really spoilers by this point, but for those that watch it, there's so much use of fire and dangerous elements that you're like, you really could only accomplish one stunt a day based on what you see, especially with the bloopers and the credit sequence. Like, the impact that it takes on Jackie's body and other people in the area. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I didn't actually know until like last year, where I heard it somewhere else that because like, obviously I've watched Jackie Chan films since I was a kid, and I very much associate him with the bloopers and just thought that was something that he did. But apparently that's something he took from Hal Needham after he was in the Cannibal Run. Is it Cannibal Run 2 he's in, or the first one? Anyway, one of the Cannibal Run movies that he was in, which was directed by Hal Needham, who also did the Smokey and the Bandit films and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that's where he took the inspiration for the blooper reel thing.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that. That's crazy. No, what I will say too, I guess, kind of as we're talking about these fight sequences, and we're going to get more in depth into that. Trying to think which one I want to discuss first. Well, in terms of the fighting in general, I was surprised. You forget just how, I guess, great or just how amazing Jackie is able to control his body, especially when he's when he's fighting drunk, and you see that like stumbling element, and you're like, geez, he just is in complete control as an actor to be able to, like, the physicality and everything about it is, I think it's just something to behold what he was able to do in general.
Yeah. I mean, like he often gets dubbed, and I think he's even kind of said it himself as like the kind of Buster Keaton of martial arts. And that's very true because he kind of perfectly merges he kind of perfectly merges Bruce Lee and Buster Keaton in one body, which is kind of amazing. And it's I think that's something we should really celebrate. Because we kind of talked about some of Jackie's kind of dramatic deficiencies, but like I say, I think as a physical actor, he is unmatched
Yeah.
in what he can do and the things he can do, and both in terms of selling the martial arts and selling the comedy and like merging the two. I think there's nobody can beat him.
Yeah. Because especially, when it gets to, I even noticed that I'd say it was the first fight sequence when he gets drunk with the kind of goons, where and it obviously during the final one it's extremed even more, but yeah, there's those points where he's like, so he's drunk and he's stumbling, but then he stops himself, and it's like he's just holding himself up with just one leg, but his body is basically at 90-degree angle, and he's just holding himself there. And there's kind of all these little moments like that, and I
Yeah,
would never be
absolutely.
able to do that at all. You're looking at it, you're like, I don't even know how somebody's body could do that.
Yeah, I mean, like there's so many moments like that, and but I mean, like I guess it's not just Jackie, because I think that like the others do really well as well.
Yeah,
Like we talked about the physical comedy of Anita Mu, and it also like I think a lot of the villains as well are obviously show off great martial arts, particularly Ken Lo as John, who ends up being the kind of main fight at the end,
yeah,
even though that was not the original plan. The original plan that he was going to fight Ho Sung Pak, who plays Henry, who's the kind of first foreman guy that we see, who which makes sense
yeah,
because when the factory workers threaten to go on strike, it is Henry is the person we see, and he seems to, at that point in the movie, he seems like the top henchman of
yeah.
the British consul. Um,
Be-
and Ken Lo's character doesn't come in until about halfway through during that kind of he's too drunk scene. So he's introduced later on in the movie, and you're kind of surprised that he kind of usurps Henry as like top guy, because you're kind of like, where was John for half the movie?
yeah,
Isn't Henry like the main guy? And so it kind of makes sense that Henry was originally supposed to be the main opponent, but apparently the actor who played him, when they were trying to do the kind of final fight sequence, he kept twisting his ankle, spraining his ankle, and
oh,
he couldn't do it. So that's how it ended up going to Ken Lo's John character.
okay, that makes sense then, because yeah, I mean, so the whole opening sequence is that he is now the new foreman, Henry, and yeah, it shows him basically without getting a scratch being able to take out every single kind of steel worker there,
Yeah,
or iron worker, with no issue whatsoever. And then to watch the first fight scene between Jackie and them, and him just kind of take him down fairly easy, like, oh, okay, well, guess something happened in between that they just kind of made him not as great as he was a moment ago, but okay.
yeah, because like you say, he's introduced in this kind of really formidable way, and then it doesn't take Jackie that much more effort to overcome him than to overcome like the kind of goons, like the kind of just standard villain goons that are usually taken out quite easily. So
Yeah,
it is quite surprising. Although he does seem to kind of, if this was like a video game, he does seem to regain points by the end of the movie, because like in the final Ironworks fight, like Henry does seem a bit kind of more badass again, even
yeah,
though, so you kind of he kind of varies throughout the movie. He's really badass in that first Ironworks fight where he's fighting the ironworkers to get them back in line. He's not. He's gone way down in the market fight, and he goes back up again in the final Ironworks fight.
He gets his power when he's in the Ironworks area.
Oh yeah. That's where it's connected. That's like outside of that zone, he's not as good. But like all his kind of fighting points are in the Ironworks. It's like in a video game. If he was in a video game, that would be his stage. But outside of his stage, it's he's useless.
Yes. Another thing about the this movie that I forgot, or maybe didn't even recognize, is how, as we've already talked about, it's regarded very highly. It's very influential, but even how influential in terms of, I was watching it, and for example, I love the movies of Stephen Chow.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, of course.
There's like the Kung Fu Hustle fight scene with the axes, and then there's the axe fight scene in this, where I was like, oh, this is right from this inspired Kung Fu Hustle. Like, there were all these moments where it's like, oh, that was in this movie that took place years later. Of just seeing how many times that this film inspired other movies, or maybe it was all subconscious and they didn't think about it that way, but still.
Yeah,
I mean, like it.
You just never know with these things, because like sometimes films very consciously borrow from something else. But I know certainly from my years of doing New Horror Express, talking to a lot of horror directors, sometimes I'll be like, and this scene seems really influenced by X, and it's actually turned out that either they'll say like, oh yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but yeah, I can see that. Or sometimes it'll be like, I've not even seen that movie. What is that movie? And you'll be like, oh, it's this, and you tell them about it, and then they'll be like, oh, that does sound very similar. So it's one of those strange things that sometimes people are subconsciously doing things, and sometimes people are doing things without even realizing that it looks so similar to something else. So you just never know with these things.
Yeah. So before we go into kind of the final fight, what everybody talks about, I will say what was strange. So I rented the version off of Amazon Prime, and it was under Drunken Master II. But I got only the dubbed version, so I'm not sure what was lost in the dubbing, because it was not a great dubbing, obviously. But then the second thing was that, so after the final fight, he drinks a bunch of the alcohol that they throw into to help keep the fires burning, and we'll talk about that in a second. But he blows these bubbles, it shows, and when the final bubble pops right before he passes out from the alcohol, the audio completely shut off, and I thought maybe it was a glitch, so I would rewind it and restart it, and it kept, it didn't. It was just that cut, where then there'd be no sound during the scene where they're celebrating that they got their property back, that the consulate was gone, like all that stuff, no sound whatsoever, even though his parent, or his dad, and his stepmother are talking to like the officials. They come back to their home, the kind of servant is talking as well, nothing. And then when Jackie Chan turns around, and it shows from all of the alcohol he had to drink, he now has permanent, I guess, brain damage is what it's said. Then the audio snaps on for the final kind of music bit. But yeah, there's a good, I'd say, 1 minute sequence of no sound. I didn't know if it's
very strange, very strange. No, that did not happen when I rented it on YouTube. So like, so it's all very strange. I guess like we're kind of doing things a little bit back to front because talking about the very, very end and then going back to the final fight. But yes, the interesting thing about the very, very end is that when it was first released in North America, that very, very end was cut out of the movie. It basically, just after the final fight finishes, like the movie just kind of wraps up, apparently in the original North American cut, because that discussion they have with the stepmother and the father and the official, and they're kind of talking about, like, because the official wants to see Wong Fei Hong, the hero, this hero, and they're like, no, you can't see him, and they're trying to hide the fact that he's blind. That's what they're trying to hide, the fact that he is now blind because of the alcohol poisoning, because he drunk this all this industrial alcohol. And then when they go into the official finally convinces them to let them see Wong Fei Hong, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, he's just training. And then they talk to, you said the servant, but I think he's actually supposed to be Wong Fei Hong's brother in the movie.
Okay, so yeah, in the dubbed version, they talk about him like he's the servant, but I thought he was the brother. That's one of the weird things. It's another one of those dubbing issues.
In the kind of subtitle version I saw, it seems to suggest that he's a younger brother, not like rather than just like a kind of manservant. So anyway, and then so they kind of land on this kind of quote unquote gag where it's like where they already know, the mother and the father already know he is blind, but then he's trying to do training with the brother, and the brother's struggling to do training with him, and then the brother kind of says like, oh, he's not just blind, it looks like he's got brain damage too, and then Jackie Chan turns around and does this kind of face, which is a kind of not very politically correct now. And basically, Dimension Films, who released the film in North America, thought this gag was in bad taste because it's kind of making fun of brain damage or mentally handicapped people. So they cut it out in the movie, and it is kind of like again, one of those gags that physically sold well, but at the same time, you're kind of like, not sure I want to laugh at that. Feel a little uncomfortable. So like, I can kind of get their point. Often when things are when things have been picked up, particularly when things were picked up by like Miramax or whatever, and like Harvey Weinstein was involved, and there's a number of these kind of films, non-English language films that were butchered for American release by them. But in this one particular case, I can kind of see their point of view.
Yeah, no, I see, and that would have been great because so not only was the audio not there, but there were no subtitles for the sequence either. So that's why I thought, is this some sort of weird director's choice that we're just like getting it all silent during this portion? Like, what is, because it feels weird now, but
no, it's just a mistake on your DVD, unfortunately.
So then because you don't even hear the stuff about him being blind or anything like that. All you see really is their mouths moving and then him doing the turnaround thing.
Right. Yeah. So here it is. Here we go. It's interesting. I do feel like these Jackie episodes, as much as I love doing them, as much as I love revisiting the Jackie Chan film, I do feel like they're quite difficult to do because usually whether we're doing it in a kind of humorous way or whether we're doing it in a kind of very chin-strokey serious way, which occasionally we do, listener, usually we're kind of deconstructing plot and plot points and narrative and talking about that and really digging into that. And because the narratives are usually so light and skimpy in Jackie Chan films, generally because the action is so complex, and action is harder to talk about than
Yes.
plot. I think that this is we do kind of keep coming on these kind of stumbling blocks where we do try and talk about some of the funniness or of maybe tonal shifts or maybe some of the things we've talked about, some of the comedy that doesn't quite work or whatever. But the meat of the movie, the thing you're really watching the movie for, and the most interesting thing about the movie is the action sequences, is the fight sequences. And we have to say, as neither of us, even though I did some martial art training when I was younger, neither of us are martial arts masters. It does make it more complex to talk about for us than the kind of traditional episode where something's a bit more got a bit more plot to kind of stick our teeth into and kind of digest and analyze. But we shall endeavor to do our very best to describe this final fight sequence in all its magnificent glory, and it really is magnificent, isn't it, Craig?
It is. So what they realize through all of the different kind of plot stuff that loosely happens, as you already stated, that they are smuggling out Chinese artifacts to sell to British museums, and and then some of the workers were captured trying to get this message out to Wang Fei Hung, and now they're all basically going in to get them out and to stop it from happening. And so Wang Fei Hung goes in at first alone while the others are kind of helping fight some of the goons on the outside. And so it's just him in this ironworks area against initially I think about 5 of the goons plus the 2 baddies. And then
Henry and
there's
John.
There's a British villain as well who there's a couple of them I feel like, but then they just don't pop up. There's like a British
I think that's one of the disappointments actually, because there's like a main British villain who's is very over the top and kind of comical and pantomime, and I did want to see him like get his comeuppance. I mean, obviously he's never presented as a fighter. He's just one of those kind of scheming politician type villains. But it would have been good to, see him getting kicked in the head or thrown out a window or something, just just get his comeuppance too.
No, I agree as well. Because I didn't think he was going to be the main fight, but I was like, at least something's got to happen to him, right? But no, after the kind of torture scene, you don't really see him again.
Yeah, I think we're just supposed to be led to presume that like he's just got his kind of tail between his legs and just is kind of scurried off back to Britain in the night kind of thing.
Yeah. But anyways, so he's going in there right now. He said he wouldn't drink, so he's sober. He's doing the fighting, but not the drunken boxing style. And this is when you start getting the kind of the sandbags going up. Well, they're not even sandbags. They're like full canisters, like smashing up and down. You have like bars being swung at Jackie Chan and more dirt being thrown at him, even fire being thrown at him and people catching on fire. It's a very intense scene, and which leads to Jackie Chan getting he gets caught on fire several times.
He does get caught on fire several times,
where he has to dump sand on himself, and
I think the craziest one is so like there's kind of 2 bits to this fight sequence. Like, so it kind of takes up about the last 20 minutes of the film. And initially, like you say, it's the, his kind of team, him going in and fighting the henchmen, and you see different fighting going on. And then there's like a kind of final kind of, I would roughly 8-minute sequence where it's just him mainly fighting Ken Lo's character John, but also fighting Henry a little bit. And that's where the kind of most intense action happens, and their fight is incredible. And one of the most, what you say, he gets caught on fire a few times, but one of the most insane ones is in the kind of one-on-one with Ken Lo, where they're initially fighting. Ken Lo is showing off his taekwondo, and as you talked about earlier, in terms of things you think a human body shouldn't be able to do.
Yes.
Ken Lo shows off that he can not only do great taekwondo head kicks, but he can also do a standing splits and hold the standing splits for apparently just ages, and apparently not rip his groin apart.
I mean, he's just talking like normal, and that whole sequence. I mean, you have Jackie because you see he's doing this. Again, we're not experts. Like this leg flick thing where he's twisting his leg back and forth and whipping it around, and it's just going so rapid.
It is insane.
Yes.
And then Jackie does one of the most insane stunts, which apparently he had to do twice because he felt he didn't get it right the first time, where he crawls backwards across hot coals.
Yeah.
The real hot coals, because Jackie is a total madman. And obviously they get the most out of that. They do the kind of slow motion kind of replay shot that all the kind of bestest stunts get in Hong Kong action movies. But watching it is quite painful, and then seeing it again in the bloopers is just what was your reaction watching Jackie crawl backwards over hot coals?
It was because so nowadays it's all digitalized or whatever, where you're watching this and then seeing the bloopers, knowing it's real, and you're like, oh, all he really has is they kind of moistened his back some to kind of help deal with the burden of that. Even the catching on fire stuff, or even there's at one point where there's these giant canisters smashing to the ground towards him, and you see it in the blooper that he misses the roll and it lands right on his arm. So you're just kind of watching what he went through to get these stunts. And so he starts drinking that. The way it's set up too, they talk about with the drunken boxing, it's like an offhanded comment. The alcohol, the sole purpose of it is that it takes away the pain receptors, basically.
So so the father does mention in when talking about it that that's the purpose of the alcohol. That it does not increase the fighter's skill level at all. It just makes them, in theory, impervious to pain, so they could just keep going against an opponent.
And you really see that, especially when he takes the first drink. They must have had to kind of paint some of his face red or add makeup to it, because after he drinks the industrial alcohol, his face is red the entire time, and he is just coming at kind of the main bad guy.
Although talking about makeup effects, I do it when Jackie first drinks the industrial alcohol and then spits fire out against Henry. Henry has a very funny kind of burnt makeup effects on his face and a very bad wig.
Yes.
which kind of dulled the impact of the brutalness of that moment.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. But it was funny, I guess, for the but yeah, no, he drinks this alcohol and then he's just coming after them like a madman, but he's getting hit and smashed, but he just keeps going. And there's this scene where it's he'll get hit back and then he just keeps doing this yell and charging, but it's very like even though it's very skilled in terms of the martial art that's being used, all of that, there's this kind of um not gritty, but there's this roughness to the
I
fighting.
I think
It's
there's
not
a roughness.
elegant. Like
Yeah, no, totally agree with what you're
yeah,
saying, and I think like there it's kind of funny because there is these kind of points where it is kind of played for laughs, and you know it's kind of made funny, but at the same time there is this kind of brutalness to the fight, because like when he's doing the thing where he's drunk alcohol and he's supposed to be impervious to pain, there's certain moments and certain like kind of hits that look, you feel the impact of the hit, you
yeah,
know, like Ken Lo like kicks him in the head, and like
yeah,
you feel the impact of that shot, but he just eats it and like continues forward, and
yeah,
you're like, and you can just tell that. I mean, I'm sure Ken Lo like held back a little bit,
yeah,
like, you know, because like he does he did or does taekwondo and has won taekwondo tournaments, so I'm sure he didn't like fully hit Jackie with like his absolute best shot, but it doesn't look like he's holding back that much. It still
no,
looks like Jackie takes quite a hit to the head.
yeah. Because it even shows at one point them charging at each other during the bloopers and hitting into one another, and then they have to stop because both of them have nosebleeds or something. Like they smashed face first into each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you're kind of watching this, and he's getting again, the whole movie, I'd say in general, it doesn't have like the elegance that comes with some martial arts. Where there's a lot of crashing into stuff. There's a lot of yeah, it's just rough around the edges, all of it. And it adds to it, but yeah, just the intensity of everything, of him falling through stuff, or getting smashed with chairs or so on. And just at one point, because he's been drinking the alcohol, it's like he's just so angry that then he just smashes what is it? It's like a container for no
Yes.
reason. It's not even, he just punches it
Yeah,
to like let off some
absolutely.
of the steam. Yeah.
I think like there's like a kind of I I think you're right. I think you know, there is martial art movies, particularly martial art movies that the kind of House of Flying Daggers, kind of Crouching
Yeah.
Tiger, Hidden Dragon, kind of wire work heavy kind of martial art kind of films that do there's this real kind of refined elegance to the fighting that comes with the wire work,
Yeah.
but this is like just rowdy chaos. This
Yeah.
is like there's it's if you watch it, it's still very skilled, it's still very on
Yeah.
point, but it's just so much more chaotic. It's so much more messy. This
But
type of fighting, and like yeah, it does have a lot of impact, which is not to denigrate the kind of more refined looking kind of wire work kung fu, which I also enjoy, but like yeah, it just this is just pure cartoon chaos in you know throughout this film.
well, even compared to the fight scenes prior, because
Yes.
like this fight scene particularly after he drinks the alcohol, even there's a point where he's like nuzzling his face into Ken Lo's face, and there's a part of you that it feels like, is he like biting him in the face right now?
Yeah,
Like
no,
what
he
is
there's a bit where he like bites his nose
yeah,
to get out of like a kind of bear hug thing that he's doing.
yeah.
So yeah, and there's another part where like John does the same to Jackie, where Jackie's doing like a kind of bear
Oh yeah,
hug
John.
thing, and then and John just kind of like rubs his chin into his eye kind
Yeah.
of thing to get out of it. But I do wonder if that difference comes from like Jackie directing this final sequence, and I think like this is the action that Jackie wanted, whereas
Yeah.
I think because the fighting gets more kind of comic and chaotic throughout the movie, it you know, there's a gradual build to it, and
Yeah.
we get to this finale, but I think the very first fight off the train and under the bridge, the kind of stick and spear fight that Jackie has with Master Fu. who is also the original director. I think that kind of grounded fighting style is what the original director wanted, like that kind of style throughout the movie. That is a bit grittier, that is a bit more kind of hard hitting in a way, but this is clearly this Ironworks fight sequence. This is clearly the action that Jackie wanted the most. And then once the original director walked off set, I think then Jackie was allowed to kind of purely have what his vision of what he wanted the fighting to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what makes the difference.
That makes sense, because it does feel drastically different. Yeah, it's just a whole nother level of intensity, and it's hard to, again, since we're not experts, and I don't know, it's one of those, if you decide to stick with this episode as an audience and haven't watched the movie yet, it is hard to put into words like just the intensity of it. Without seeing, having seen the movie. Like, I wouldn't be able to, I don't think, my partner has never seen this film. I don't know how I'd be able to describe, like, give an appropriate description of what I watched during that final bit.
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure either that I could. But what I can say is, I love that final fight sequence. I think there's many great moments in it. Like we talked about, some of the this kind of small comical moments, like the kind of the getting out with the chin, or the biting, and I love the spitting fire thing, and then beating up Henry, and I particularly love how the fight ends. So, like, basically, John is, like, his moves are slowly getting less and less effective because Jackie's just powering through them. The head kicks that were, and all the kicks that were getting him before, just aren't doing the same. And even a kick that knocks him down, he just springs back up and jumps kind of diagonally straight at him, like an arrow. And then Wong Fei-hung wins the fight because he knocks John down. He then does a move where it's like a kind of rapid foot action that he kind of essentially slaps him with his foot, multiple times. Then he picks him up into a wheelbarrow, and then with both legs into a wheelbarrow, and then kicks him in his face, which shoots him against a wall. He then picks him up in a fireman's carry and then slams him into a box, knocking him out and or killing him. We don't know. And that is how the fight is won. And I think it's a spectacular way to end the fight.
Well, and I like the fact that he does that thing, and it happens earlier too, but where he takes his head and he, like, puts it around his, like, he keeps spinning it around his arms, like almost like what you would do with a basketball or something. I don't know how to describe it, but he's like almost just moving his head around his body, which I know is a weird way for me to describe that, and I don't think it gives the visual appropriately, but but just basically making him dizzy, like juggling his head around.
Yes, absolutely. We can only apologize, listener, that our vocabulary and our lack of martial arts knowledge. I mean, like I say, I've always liked martial arts. I've done some martial arts when I was younger. I've watched tons of martial arts movies, but I'm not a master. I'm not an expert. I was barely out of being a beginner. So, like, in terms of my own martial art experience, so our vocabulary fails to describe the kind of the true greatness of this sequence. But I hope we've very much tried our best to impress upon you just how good this final fight is, and I hope that has come across in the end. But yeah, I mean, that is pretty much Drunken Master II in the books. I'm not sure if I would put it in my top 10 action movies of all time. I'm not sure I could even compile a top 10 action movie of all time. That's too much. I have done one for the 90s. It could very well be in the top 10 of the 90s for sure. It's definitely one of the great action movies from the 90s. I would recommend any action movie fan, particularly if you're into martial art movies, to definitely check out this movie. But Craig, yes, that's pretty much in the bag. Do you have any other final thoughts or things to say about Drunken Master II?
No, I would agree that I would say that much like other Jackie Chan movies, don't watch it for the plot at all. The fight sequences are brilliant, and I think for that reason it's no wonder why it's rated so high, because especially that final fight alone, even if the rest of the movie did not have any fighting whatsoever, that final fight alone is incredible. But you also have there's a whole axe gang fight sequence. There's several others that are amazing, and yeah, so I would definitely recommend it to anybody that wants to just, I guess, watch an action movie in general, but specifically the 90s, just to say this is one you really need to watch to see what inspired so many others, potentially, consciously, subconsciously, or not at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely top tier Jackie. So definitely recommend that people check it out. So before we head on out, before we close this episode completely, do you have anything you want to plug, Craig, that you're working on? And just give out your normal social media details that we do at the end of the show.
Yeah. At this moment, I'm not really. I don't think there's much to plug. Slowly making way at I think that I've plugged before, kind of a documentary stand-up show that is about offensive comedy. And then which will happen in May of 2024, after this whole incubation workshop process, where I'm going to be testing it out over the next several months. And then if you want to follow me, you can at Guilty Animals, which is under Twitter, or what it's called X now, and then Instagram and so on. Also, occasionally I do a horror podcast called Bloodhound Picks, where we mainly just talk about kind of obscure horror films. Occasionally we'll talk to people within the horror community and stuff like that, but mainly it's just obscure horror films. But yeah, follow me on any of those.
Excellent. Okay. And if you're wanting to follow this show on social media, you can. We've got a Twitter or X or whatever Elon Musk wants to call it. It's Twitter. Everybody's still going to call it Twitter, Elon. Just get over it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're at 90s Action there. And in case Elon Musk has killed Twitter, we now have a Facebook page as well that I recently set up. And I don't know, like by the stage you're listening to this in January, I don't know, I might have looked into Threads or Mastodon or one of those other ones that people are jumping onto, because Twitter is dying a death. So yeah, check us out there. Leave us any comments. As always, we would be delighted if you rate, review, and subscribe to us on Spotify. Stitcher doesn't exist anymore, so not there. But basically, Spotify and Apple Podcasts are your main ones that really boost the old algorithm. If you give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review, so if you want to do that, that would be highly, highly appreciated. But all it leaves me to do now is to say cheerio to you all, and also come back again here next month, where we will be talking about the Ice-T actioner surviving the game. Until then, though, see ya.